Merkel Media.
I'm exhausted, looking for everything in the shadows. Start looking at people like they don't matter. I'm waking up to the fact, more than a little bit shallow. I'm lost in this hole, but I don't wanna. I'm lost in this hole, 'cause I'm just trying to
What's good, everyone? I am glad to be back with you another week here on Free the Rabbits. And today we're going to dig into something a little more current in the current event sector. And I do this from time to time because sometimes I think that it's very relevant. However, I think the last time I did this, which was the No Diddy episode, I think I had a few people reach out to me and said I was a shill because I was jumping on board with all the other conspiracy theorists were talking about. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And that's just how it is. If I feel compelled to talk about it. And one thing about the No Diddy episode, I've done a ton of research on Diddy for the better part of 10, 15 years. So that was just more of a culmination of a lot of research I've done on Diddy. And most of that research was stuff I pulled from the 90s. So it was a whole different perspective. Secondly, if I'm talking about current events or people involved in current events or things in pop culture, it's what I like to do. I like to talk about pop culture. As a matter of fact, I love talking about hip hop and its connections with the occult because that's where I came from. That is the sector that I came up in when it came to my personal connections with the occult. So I wanted to get that out of the way very quickly because I know that there'll be somebody inevitably that says that this episode is me trying to jump on board with the conspiracy bandwagon and trying to garner followers or whatever else. No. This is something I want to talk about and I feel compelled to talk about. And some of the research that I've done recently actually ties into some occult machinations. And this will happen towards the back end of this episode. And I thought it was interesting. There's this weird connection that connects directly to some occult imagery and iconography. And I always think that whenever we're looking at weird things that are happening, even currently, you can always find some sort of connection to the occult there. It just inevitably happens. We can look at any kind of things happening in our current government or in other governments around the world, or just any kind of thing that's being permeated in the entertainment industry. And a lot of times it directly correlates back to the occult. And I found this weird connection in the fires in California to this particular thing that I've done research on in the past, but I did some more research on here in connection with that. Now, the whole episode won't be specifically about that. We will be talking about the actual fires. I want to dig through some of the conspiracy theories that are being said about it, and I want to put some light on some of those conspiracy theories and say, hey, this sounds like it's legitimate. This sounds like it's a stretch. This is my personal opinion on this. So I want to go at it from that angle. Very much the approach of the first episode that I started with, which was the Cass Sunstein effect. I want to go with that legitimate approach. Now, it will get weird towards the back end of it because, again, this is going to tie into the occult. So I don't shy away from the weird, but at the same time, there's a whole lot going on when it comes to social media and even in the mainstream news about these fires going on in California. And I just think some of it's just false. And this is coming straight out of the truther or conspiratorial camp. I think some of this stuff, it just doesn't have a lot of validity to it. People are grasping at straws. Now, I want to say in defense of some of those people, when governments and people in power aren't forthcoming, this is why that conspiracy theories just get out of control, because they're not being forthcoming and honest. So when you have a body of elites that are not being honest with the rest of the populace, yes, we will see conspiracy theories spin out of control because we're just trying to get to the bottom of it and figure out what the truth is. So I do give a lot of leeway to people who are doing that. However, I think there are people that are just using this fire to try to garner likes, garner some sort of adulation from their truther peers. I know some people are just trying to have posts blow up. I've seen posts online of fires from years ago being used to say that these are pictures from the fire now, or this is why the fires are happening in California, and it'll be something from a long time ago. So be on the lookout for a lot of recirculated conspiracies that have absolutely nothing to do with this particular fire. And before I get started too, I just want to say, for me personally, thoughts and prayers go out to the people that are actually suffering here, because I think that gets lost in the shuffle. This is very similar to what happened in the Carolinas with the Hurricane Helene, and conspiracy theories reigned out of control with that one too. However, I think there are some legitimate conspiracy theories that I can look at and say, hey, here's a body of evidence of why this could be possible, why this has happened. So I'm not going to say that even that event is just a pure event, if that makes any sense. I don't think that it was something that wasn't at least manipulated by governments for their own gains. Now, whether or not that government started the hurricane, that's a whole nother debate. I just am talking directly about what the governments do in response to these events. Very similar to this particular event as well, because again, as soon as something fire-related happens, what do people say? Dues. They're going to say direct energy weapons. That's going to be the first thing they say. Before you know it, you're going to have fake videos coming out of lasers from the sky, and they're going to say, look at this, it happened here. Listen, we're going to talk about dues a little bit today too, because dues do exist. Direct energy weapons do exist, and this is per our government's mouths, and I'm going to play a clip today per our governments talking about direct energy weapons. So I'm not saying they don't exist, but I am saying that the use of them in conspiratorial circles is just out of control. Absolutely out of control. It gets to the point where just regular brush fires can't happen, or regular hurricanes can't happen due to HARP or whatever else that people create. Now, I'm not saying, again, that things cannot be manipulated. I want to structure that right now before we start. And I do want to say, before I get into this, that I do think there are some weird things surrounding these fires in Eaton and the Palisades. I definitely think there is some weird things happening, especially when it comes to the response to it. Now, we can argue till we're blue in the face about how they started, but the response to it is pretty evident, and how that the governmental structures from the top down in California were not very ready, one, for this. And we can delve into why they weren't ready. And we can also say that they seem to be really dragging their feet into helping the people that were suffering. Now, a lot of celebrities also suffered in this, and we're going to get into why that could be a thing. I think there's a few different reasons. I don't think it's all negative. I don't think every person in Hollywood is a reptilian out to drink people's blood. I'm not one of those people. And if you're looking to hear that on this podcast, then it's maybe is not the one for you, because I don't think everyone in Hollywood is evil. I just don't. I think percentage-wise, it doesn't make any sense. Now, do I think there are some people in Hollywood that are complicit with things that are going on around them and maybe they're not personally involved? Absolutely. But I don't think that everyone is evil. I just don't. It's like saying everybody in the sports entertainment sector is evil too. Oh, they had to be evil to get to where they're at. Well, sometimes people are talented. Number two, sometimes God blesses people to put them in the positions that they're in. Again, I think there are Christians that are in these fields as well. So to say that it's all evil is a very irresponsible thing that I see consistently in the conspiratorial world. I've had people blow me up in emails talking about, now you know they're all evil. Now you know they're all part of EGI, which, by the way, go listen to my episode on EGI, which is only available on Rumble or Spotify or Apple or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Go listen to that episode and you'll see my take on what I think about EGI, but they're not all that. It's a super small percentage, if that. And I think we've got to get out of this mind frame of getting wrapped up in these conspiracies to the point that we're saying it's all this. And I've seen this happen with this whole California fire. It's all over X, all over Instagram, all over TikTok about what people think's going on. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed to voice their opinions about what they think. What I do have an issue with is people saying this is exactly what it is. None of us know exactly what it is. Now, we can point to certain things, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today, and talk about some of the, as I like to say on the show, characters involved and what they're doing or not doing to help people in California. But again, I want to preface this with, I want to approach this from as much of a logical place as possible. But you know how I do. I like to get weird on this show, especially when it comes to the occult. And the back end of this will definitely delve into some occult imagery that I found fascinating that really made me think about what they might be doing in California. What's up, guys? Before we get back into the episode, I just wanted to let people know here on YouTube who have been reaching out to me asking how they can donate to the show to help with the show's growth. You can become a member here on YouTube now. We have 3 different tiers: Nephilim Portal Babies, Nephilim Hunter, and Good Nephilim. And all of them have a few different things that are different from each other. One of the main things that all 3 of them have is custom emojis that you can use in any of the chats or in any of the comments. Again, guys, I really appreciate you listening to the show, and that's the best way possible to donate is your time. And make sure you share it, guys. Share the show. It's just an interesting thought, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I do want to talk about the initial part of these fires. Now, as of right now that I'm recording this, which this episode will drop a few days after I've recorded this, I moved some stuff around so I could record this episode because I thought it was very relevant. So as of right now, there are 25 people who have died. There are 12,000 structures that are destroyed, and it prompted evacuation orders for as many as 200,000 residents. Now, this is in Palisades and Eaton, and there are several other smaller areas that have been hit as well, but those are the 2 main areas that have been hit. Now, before we jump into the characters involved, I want to play a little clip from Bill Burr on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. And I know some of you guys are probably rolling your eyes right now because I know how the conspiratorial world thinks about Jimmy Kimmel. Now, I do know that a lot of people do like a lot of things that Bill Burr has to say, because he's pretty uncut in a lot of things that he has to say about relationships, about race, about different things that some people would say he should be canceled over, which I don't agree with that. I think free speech should be alive and well. People should be allowed to say things that they think or feel, even if we don't agree with it. And I encourage people to do the same here on my show. And believe me, I see it in the comments from people that disagree with what I have to say on the show. And what I have to say to that is, we're going to disagree. I have my life experiences, I have my research, and you have yours. So that's how it is, but I do encourage people to say how they feel on the show. You're totally allowed to. In the live chat on YouTube, feel free. As long as you're respectful, I encourage it, because I think discourse is important. I think it's how we all learn. And I think that we should all try to live our lives that way. I think Bill Burr's that way. But Bill Burr had some very interesting things to say on Jimmy Kimmel about the fires, and I'm going to play that now, and then we'll talk about it briefly.
It's very good to see you. I heard you had to evacuate your home.
Yes. Like most people, I had to. I got lucky, the winds moved, but, the fire was coming and all that stuff. So I feel lucky.
Are you guys back in?
And I think everybody did a great job.
Yeah.
Unlike the internet,
Yeah, right. I know. It's right.
Oh, my God. All of these fire experts. Why didn't you just fly a helicopter into the ocean? And then just, I don't know, because there was 100-knot winds? You want to do that? You want to do that at night, you lunatic?
How are you?
This was definitely mismanaged.
That's a big word we're hearing now.
Mismanaged, like some idiot on the internet knows how to manage the worst fire in LA, sitting there in his underwear. You know what? Looking at the footage on the internet, I have determined that this here was mismanaged.
So Bill Burr is trying to make light of people who are asking questions about the fire. He says that people that are looking into the fact that it was mismanaged or sitting in probably a basement somewhere in their underwear, pointing fingers and not actually knowing what managing a fire is, which I will agree to some point that none of us know what it would be like to be in that situation, to be fire chief over something as massive as these fires that have broke out and then have to manage that. However, to put a massive rebuttal against Bill Burr, the fact of the matter is there is a ton of evidence out there, legitimate evidence that even both sides of the mainstream media can't deny. And we know what both sides mean. And the caveat I want to say before I continue is that I'm going to do my best on this show to stay out of this politically. For anyone that doesn't know me from before, I'm pretty apolitical. I look at the two-party system that we have currently in place is pretty flawed, and I have a lot to say about any of the candidates that are going for election, have been elected, were president, are becoming president. I think that we can point to a lot of negative things on all sides. But that's all I'm going to say from my personal perspective. I'm going to look at this as legitimately as possible and focus more on the fire and stay out of the politics of it. However, we will have to talk about the politics of it because of what these people involved are using it as. And this is kind of what Bill Burr's done here. Clearly, Bill Burr is a very left-leaning comedian. He always has been. I don't know why that's a shock to people. Just because he pushes the limits comedically doesn't mean that he doesn't lean towards one party, which he clearly does. He's never been a Trump fan either, and he's been very vocal about that. So I don't know why this was such a surprise to people when he said this about the fires. However, I completely disagree with him that we're just supposed to sit back and trust that people are taking care of things when clearly we're looking just on the surface level that things were not being taken care of. And I think people have every right to push back and ask questions and push their politicians that they have put in office to do the things that they've asked them to do. And a lot of people are hurting. People have lost their homes. People have died. People have been injured. All of these things have happened because Guess what, Bill Burr? Mismanagement. That's exactly what happened. And I'm going to talk about one particular person right now, Mayor Karen Bass. She's an American politician, social worker, and former physician assistant who has served as the 43rd mayor of Los Angeles since 2022. A member of the Democratic Party, Bass previously served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 2011 to 2022 and in the California State Assembly from 2004 to 2010, serving as Speaker during her final Assembly term. So she is a career politician. She has always been a career politician, and this is what helped her get to this mayoral position in California. Now, the problem with Mayor Karen Bass is the fact that as the fires exploded in Los Angeles, this was on January 7th, Mayor Karen Bass was posing for photos at an embassy cocktail party in Ghana with pictures being posted all over social media, which will show some of these pictures as I'm talking now of her being in Ghana. Now, she went to the West African nation as part of a Biden administration delegation to the inauguration of the Ghanaian president, John Mahama, which she attended earlier that day. She traveled abroad on January 4th as the National Weather Service intensified warnings about a coming windstorm and arrived back in Los Angeles around 11 a.m. on January 8th, more than 24 hours after the fires ignited. So one of the biggest issues that people have with her leaving to go on this delegation to Ghana was the fact that previously, before she left on January 7th, on January 4th, the National Weather Service warned about this event that could happen to California. And she left anyway. So that, Bill Burr, is mismanagement. That is one example of mismanagement for sure, because if you are the mayor of a city where the National Weather Service has issued intense warnings about an imminent possible disaster, best believe that you should stay in that city. Best believe that you shouldn't be leaving to gallivant around at an inauguration of a Ghanaian president, partying it up, even though, by the way, her publicist came out and said that as soon as the fires started happening, she was in another room taking calls all night until the plane could leave from Ghana. No, because the pictures were posted during the time that these calls were supposedly made. Now, you could say the pictures were maybe taken before, and maybe that's possible, but it just seems like that she's partying it up while this is going on. Now, this made me think of the Maui fires that happened in August 8th of 2023 to August 11th of 2023. And I would say that if you're involved in any part of this conspiratorial world, I'm sure that you have heard a lot about the Maui fires and what was going on there. As a matter of fact, I've talked about this in the past already, but there are some similarities. Joshua Booth Green, who is an American politician and physician, has served since 2022 as the 9th governor of Hawaii. He's also a member of the Democratic Party. He served as the 15th lieutenant governor of Hawaii from 2018 to 2022, member of the Hawaii Senate from 2008 to 2018, and a member of the Hawaiian House of Representatives from 2004 to 2008. So another career politician, Joshua Booth Green. Guess what? Right before the fire started in Maui, he's gone. He's nowhere to be found. As a matter of fact, Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke came out and said we were unprepared, said that Maui's top emergency response leaders were off island and Governor Green was outside the state. Well, of course, he tried to cover it up and said it shouldn't have mattered. We should have been ready for this. And very similar to what's going on in California. Mismanagement. You got to ask the question, why is the mayor gone? Why is the governor of Hawaii gone right before these disasters happen? I don't think that we're all in our underwear, Bill Burr, sitting around the house, not having a clue of what's going on because we can point to legitimate questions that we all have. Why are these people not there when these things are happening? Dare I say it kind of reminds me of 9/11 when there were certain people that didn't show up to the towers that day. Very wealthy, influential people. This is a known fact. This isn't a conspiracy theory. We can point to this and say these people didn't show up right before something tragic happens. I talked about Agent Crowley, the Lusitania, same thing. On that boat, as it's headed to the UK, right before, there were people who were of high standing that did not get on that boat that day before it was shot down by a submarine from the Germans. Why is it that this is consistently happening throughout history? We can go all the way back and come all the way to now. It's still happening. Why is she not there? I mean, we could say it's bad timing. Maybe it is. Maybe it is bad timing. But it does cause people to ask questions. And I think they're valid questions. Now, one of the big criticisms was that the mayor, Karen Bass, again, slashed the fire department's budget by over $17 million in 2023. And it drew intense criticism after all of these fires started. And as a matter of fact, May of last year, LAFD Chief Kristen Crowley warned, we are at the breaking point where firefighters can no longer do more with less. So Kristen Crowley, which a lot of people are criticizing right now for mismanaging this fire, was actually butting heads with Karen Bass over her slashing the fire department's budget by $17 million, saying, listen, we don't have the resources to stop some sort of fire if it happened. And Crowley was appointed Los Angeles fire chief in 2022, and this was during a time where there were complaints of rampant hazing, harassment, discrimination among its 3,400 member ranks. And at the time, Mayor Eric Garcetti brought her in as a stabilizing force. And he said, I look for who's best, not just who makes history, because the protection of our city first and foremost has to go to the human being who's best prepared to lead. Let me be clear, that is Kristen Crowley. And Crowley is a 22-year veteran in the fire department. Now, right now, what we're getting is a lot of blame because she's a female. We're actually getting a lot of blame across the board for different, again, like I like to say, characters that are involved here for being women that are in charge over this catastrophe. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm not one of these people that starts gender blaming over disasters. I can say that in certain job fields that I think gender matters, especially when we're looking at physicality. Absolutely. I think it does matter. And I think that's why you're going to see that the majority of firefighters are men. And I think that that's very valid for people to say. Now, running a department, I think, is a little different. Running certain things in any governmental position, I think, is a little different. I think there are women who run certain sectors in the government very well. I'm not one of those guys. And if you're one of those people that thinks that way and you don't like what I got to say right now, hightail it out of here, because I am going to be very fair and even across the board. I don't point at specific races, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, as being the evilest race in the world. And they're here to take us all out. No. There are evil people in every race across the globe, period. And if you're one of those people that wants to point to a certain group of people and say that they're evil and they're the ones taking us out, you can leave the channel. Absolutely leave the channel, because I will not back down from that. Just as much as I say that I don't adhere to any race of people saying that they are God's chosen people and they're the first man or whatever else, same applies to this. I think that there is evil across the board in all sectors of life, and I will not deter away from that. I just won't. Now, Kristen Crowley was, from all indications, a DEI hire because of her sexual orientation. She was put in this position from most people's point of view because of that reason only. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that all the way. I think that could have played a part for sure in why that she was looked at to the position. But we also have to look at the fact she's a 22-year veteran. She's been in the fire department for a long, long time. To say that she doesn't understand it would be absolutely ludicrous. And also, to the point of women can't do anything physical, I think it's ludicrous too. I don't know if I've talked about it on this show, but I've talked about it previously on other shows. My sister is a prime example of that. She is a lieutenant in the police force. She's been in law enforcement for over 15 years. She was undercover for the better part of half of that time. And she's helped take down groups like the Black Mafia and other organizations like the One Percenters as a part of what she does. And she also ran lead on tons of raids as a part of the SWAT team, the only female to do so in the state that she lives. So I can say that there are women that are the exceptions. Now, is Kristen Crowley one of the exceptions? I don't know her background and what she's done in those 22 years. But I can say for 22 years, she was a firefighter. And we can't disavow that fact. You know, as much as we want to point blame and say that, oh, that's how she got here. And matter of fact, all of the women in the fire department that we're going to talk about here today, they've been in it for a long, long time. So to point and say, oh, this is a DEI hire, I don't know. I think partially there's an argument for it for sure. But you can't say wholly because it's not like they weren't experienced in their fields. Now, some of their responses to what's happening haven't gone over well with people. But I can say that Crowley came out and to this day has been butting heads with Mayor Karen Bass. Even when they stood solidified together on camera, when Karen Bass got back from Ghana, it was strained. So Crowley has been saying this entire time that, hey, we're not getting the money, we're not getting the help. So I can't point to her all the way, right? Clearly there was some stuff mismanaged. But if your boss is taking the resources away from you, and this can trickle all the way up to Gavin Newsom, who we'll talk a little bit about here today too, who was making decisions when it came to the water supply, that's another reason why there wasn't enough water to fight these fires. You can only do what you can with what you're given. And the fact that Crowley was in a public spat at one point with Karen Bass over a lack of resources, including personnel and equipment that the fire department desperately needs when it comes to infernos. And this is actually recently they got into a public spat over this when Bass got back from Ghana. Makes me think that I'm not on the particular boat that she is fully to blame here. As a matter of fact, she came out and said, I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. It's my job as the fire chief for Los Angeles City Fire Department to make sure our firefighters have exactly what they need to do their jobs. So again, she has been pushing, even at the public city budgets hearings last year. She asked the city for an increase of 159 personnel, which they denied. So it's not like she wasn't trying. So this is one of those ones where people want to point to DEI and say that's how she got her job. And it's possible there's some indication that that could be the case, but it's not like she wasn't trying or isn't trying now. You're handcuffed if you don't have the resources that you need. Now, we could say it's a trickle-down effect and it's all corrupt from the top down. And there's an argument for that too. And I'm not saying that, but I want to look at everything legitimately. I want to look at people legitimately and say, this is what they're involved in or this is what they're not involved in. Now, another character who has found some intense criticism would be Christine Larson, LAFD assistant chief over the fire department. And she is a 33-year veteran of the Los Angeles City Fire Department. So she, again, has been involved in the fire department for over 33 years. So it's not like these people are DEI hires that have been, working FD for a couple years and then they're promoted. No, these people have been in it long enough to understand how it works. And I'm not saying they've been doing it right. You could be doing it wrong for 33 plus years. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying I don't know enough about her track record and history of what she's done within the fire department to say that she doesn't know what she's doing completely. Now, what I can say, we can point to certain things she said recently that give me the indication that she doesn't have everyone's best interests at heart. And I'm going to play a clip right now where she talks about people that look like or feel like a firefighter when they come in to help, and then people that necessarily maybe don't need help either. I'll play this and we'll talk about it a little bit.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Okay, so I'm sure some of you guys are laughing right now if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, or if you're watching here on YouTube or Rumble. It's kind of ridiculous to say that when I walk in to help somebody who's in trouble, they're going to feel more at ease if I look like them. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care what someone looks like at all. If I'm in trouble and I'm in danger, just help. Just help. I don't care if you look like someone that doesn't even look human, but you come in and you help me escape from a fire, then I'm going to be forever grateful. And the fact that she used an argument like, you shouldn't be in that fire anyway if I have to carry you out of, that's not good enough. That shouldn't be your response. And that to me looks like that you are very inadequate at your job. And then it makes me question the 33 plus years that you've been working within the LA Fire Department. Now, she has definitely been a part of the DEI programs since her time in college all the way to now. She's helped implement these programs within the fire department. So this one we can point to directly and say, yes, this is DEI all the way. Now, I want to say just a very brief history on DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace, it can be traced back to the mid-1960s. I just think this word has resurfaced again within the past 4 or 5 years because it's become such a hot buzzword within mainstream media and obviously on social media as well. But it's been around for a long time. And to be honest with you, I think the original incarnation of it was supposed to be good. I think that they wanted to help employees adjust to integrating within offices that were predominantly white. And I do believe that. Absolutely. But I do think that 1980s, 1990s, there was a huge shift within DEI where it switched from just the racial issues and gender issues, and then it went full spectrum. It went LGBTQ+, it went to all these different ethnic, religious groups, and it just slowly went out of control. And I think as it started maturating what they were trying to turn DEI into what it is today, that in the 2000s all the way to now, that it's become something that a lot of people frown on. Because it's not about equality, it's about equity, which are two different things. And it's also put people in positions that probably shouldn't be in those positions because of what it's being used to do. And we see it happen all the time in all kinds of different sectors of life where someone's more qualified, but because they're not a part of this DEI group, they don't get the job over someone who's less qualified. And I think that when it comes to Christine Larson, and we can look to what she just said in that clip that I showed, that it seems like that she has DEI more on her mind than actually helping the people in California. And I want to show a disparity between her and Crowley, because I think that Crowley is in a little bit different boat. I think people are going to point to DEI because of her sexual orientation, but I am looking at what she's tried to do, how she's tried to help, how she's been butting heads with Bass. I don't think she falls under the same category, but I think because she's a woman, because of her sexual orientation, that people are going to lump her in with the rest of them and say they're all inadequate, which from a whole, from the top down, they're not doing a great job. But I want to be always honest and very forthcoming on the show about information that I dig up. And I do think that when it comes to Crowley versus Larson versus Bass, I think it's a little different. And I do think from all indications that she has and is trying to help the best way she can, but because of what's spawned out of this whole thing, I think that it's going to lump her in with the rest because of the inadequacies from the top down. Now, another interesting thing as we start segueing into the more conspiratorial questions that people have been asking is that insurance companies about 2 to 3 months ago stopped allowing people to renew fire hazard insurance. And State Farm was one of the major players in that. Now, that's also very interesting. Why is it that they would do that? Well, we can point to legitimately, it's been a major drought going on in California. And if you're an insurance company and you're trying to protect your interest, you know it's just a matter of time before things become literally combustible. So I do think that they weren't allowing people to renew it because of that. Now, do I think it's some underhanded plot by all these insurance companies that were in on the manufactured fires that people say are happening? Probably not. I honestly don't think that these insurance companies were involved like that. I think that more than likely, they just predicted what was going to happen. I think any of us could have done that. I think if we would have seen a drought coming and coupled with funding being cut throughout the fire departments, these think tanks that are a part of these insurance conglomerates, they're smart. They can just see into the future and say, well, there's probably going to be some massive fire that happens, kind of like the one that happened back in 2018. And they could predict from this drought that's been happening that, hey, this could get really bad. We don't want to pay out a bunch of money. We're not going to renew these people's fire hazard insurance so we don't get hit with having to pay out a bunch of money. That's what I really think happened with these insurance companies. I don't think it was some sort of plot from the insurance companies. However, I did think it was kind of ironic, I guess would be a good word, that the Los Angeles Rams and Minnesota Vikings wildcard playoff game was moved from SoFi Stadium to State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, after the wildfires ravaged Los Angeles County. So it's kind of ironic that State Farm pulls all of these renewals on fire hazard insurance, and then they say, hey, just come to our stadium to play the game that you can't play where all the fires are raging. I know a lot of people brought that up as a signifier. They're in on it, but I just find it ironic, personally. Now, we're going to start getting to some of the claims that they've been talking about, that the conspiratorial world's been talking about. And I'm going to break down what I think about some of these. I'm going to say that, hey, this is a huge possibility, or this is just a no-go for me. You can still believe it, but it'd probably be a no-go for me on some of these because I just don't think there's enough evidence outside of just circumstantial evidence to say this is exactly what it is. Now, before I jump into some of Gavin Newsom's involvement in this or pre-involvement in some of this, I do want to say that obviously Trump's going to come up a little bit here because Trump's been definitely running his mouth on Truth Social and some of the other platforms about what he thinks is going on and the ineptitude that's happening in California, which he's not wrong about some of it. Now, some of the claims that he's making, they have no base to them. But I think even people that have voted for Trump would say that's not why they voted for him, because he's running his mouth. I think you knew what you're getting into on that front. I think some people voted for him because they thought that he was the best person for the job. That's a whole nother discussion that I may never touch on this show about exactly what I think about politics in general. But to get back to Newsom and what's been going on, I thought this was interesting. And I'm going to play this clip. And I'm going to tell you what I think about it before I jump into the Newsom stuff, because I just think that this is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, here at the state capitol, California lawmakers had their first session since those fires started in Los Angeles. And with all of the damage piling up and with a lot of questions about the ripple effects that could have on the rest of the state assembly prioritized a separate special legislative session to help California prepare for Donald Trump.
Good morning, members.
Despite several empty seats in the chamber because of the LA wildfires, the Democratic State Assembly gavelled into its special legislative session to prepare for incoming President Donald Trump.
I'd ask that you keep in mind
Governor Newsom called the special session shortly after the election. As fires raged in Southern California, state lawmakers still prioritized their anti-Trump work. They established a committee and set a hearing for the legislation that sets aside $25 million to prepare for legal battles with the incoming administration.
I'm here to address this.
Democratic Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas didn't want to talk about it afterward. He would not answer my question. Is this the right time?
This is a historic wildfire. This is a historic event. These wildfires, as I mentioned, are going to be quite possibly some of the worst wildfires and disasters in state and natural history.
While this wildfire is happening, and while people are trying to understand what's going on and are worried about disaster relief, worried about the ability to get homeowners insurance, your chamber gavelled into a special legislative session to prepare for Donald Trump in a way that you are already able to do without a special legislative session. So again, is now the right time for that?
So certainly our focus right now is Speaker Ashley. At this moment, my colleagues and I, we are acting with great urgency to ensure that we're providing much needed relief to Angelenos, to ensure that we understand what it's going to take for this region to recover.
So I'm sure some of you guys are laughing about that too. It's absolutely ludicrous. And Gavin Newsom was at the forefront of pushing this. So California's Assembly and State Senate held a special legislative session. This is while the wildfires are going on, not for disaster relief, not for fire containment, any kind of strategizing for that. No, to literally prepare for Donald Trump coming in office. Matter of fact, they set aside $25 million for legal battles with the Trump administration that's coming in. Again, I'm not here to talk about who's better in this. What I will say is this: why are we not caring about the people that are suffering? Politics should be thrown out of the window when it comes to this. Why are you worried about the incoming presidential administration and not worried about the people in California? This is ridiculous. It is. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you sit on. This is ridiculous. And I just showed you the clip. It's not fake. This ain't fake news. This is real. And the fact that they're putting $25 million aside to prepare for legal battles, why don't you take that $25 million and dump it into helping the people of California? It's not going to happen. Not with career politicians. And that's on both sides of the aisle. Now, I know people will point towards one side of the aisle on this because this state is predominantly that side of the aisle. I could just as well point to many other states who are part of the other side of the aisle where nastiness and corruption is going on as well. But this segues into Gavin Newsom. This sets the tone for Gavin Newsom and how he wants to take care of California or not take care of it. Now, Gavin Newsom has been blamed here recently for lack of water for the hydrants. And I'm going to read some of what Jay Lund, a professor of civil and environmental engineering at the University of California, said about the fire hydrants running dry. And clearly he's on Gavin Newsom's side. So he's going to have a different outlook than probably a lot of people who are suffering or people from the outside who are just questioning the narratives. He explains that the hydrants are connected to a water distribution network of pipes that run beneath the cities that are fed by local distribution water reservoirs. The local reservoirs, in turn, are fed by larger regional reservoirs, which are close to full capacity. He said there's no shortage of water in Southern California, but there was a shortage of water in the areas that had the fires because the storage they had locally in the neighborhoods and the towns was not enough for the event. He added that cities across the U.S. have water distribution pipe systems that are designated to provide enough water to fight large fires. However, if the fire is massive, the stored water will only last for a short time before the supply is exhausted. He also said, I think the reason why they ran out of water was that the fire was much bigger than what the hydraulic systems in the local storage systems were designed for, even though the region in California has really quite a lot of water. And additionally, he said there is no water shortage. Data from the California Department of Water Resources shows that of January 12th, the state's major water supply reservoirs were filled either at or above historic averages as of Thursday. Now, Newsom did come out, which is weird because it's almost like he's coming out saying the complete opposite of what Lund's talking about. He's calling for an independent investigation into the loss of water, pressure to local fire hydrants, and the reported unavailability of water supplies from the Santa Ynez Reservoir. And I'm laughing because we can get into a little bit about this Santa Ynez Reservoir near the Pacific Palisades was completely empty. 117 million gallons of water empty. I'm sorry, Lund, that doesn't make any sense. You said that California has a ton of water. Well, it doesn't, because the Palisades fire erupted on Tuesday, January 7th, and by 3 a.m., the 3 1 million gallon water tanks in Pacific Palisades ran dry due to extreme demand. So after that, they're looking into this reservoir, 117 million gallon reservoir, Santa Ynez Reservoir, completely empty. Oh, but Gavin Newsom said, well, let's get an investigation. Find out what's going on. Oh, and they said that the reservoir was taken out of service to meet safe drinking water regulations. And the DWP said that in a statement recently. Then they said a tear in the reservoir's cover made the water supply subject to contamination, leading the agency to drain it. Before this happened. Oh, so we're going to drain it right before this massive fire breaks out. And again, maybe it's just pure ineptitude. Maybe these guys are just idiots. But I know a lot of people would look at this and say, isn't that convenient that 117 million gallon reservoir is completely empty due to, quote unquote, trying to meet safe drinking water regulations. Maybe it was. Maybe all the water's contaminated and then you get rid of it. Maybe that's exactly what it is, and it's just bad timing, guys. It's bad timing. But Gavin Newsom's on the job, and he's looking into it. So this is one of the claims that Governor Newsom's policies are to blame for lack of water for hydrants. And in all honesty, we could say that there's validity to that one. Clearly, the water supply was drained, and the fact that Gavin Newsom could even act like he didn't know what was going on there, he's one of two things. Either he really is that big of an idiot, or he knew why they drained it, or he allowed someone else who was below him in power to handle this, and he didn't want to know exactly what was going on, so he could say, oh, I don't know what's going on. Let's look into it. So we're going to jump to the next one. Newsom didn't sign a supposed water restoration declaration. So this is one of Trump's posts on Truth Social. He said that Newsom did not sign this water restoration declaration that was put before him. The declaration would have allegedly allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snowmelt from the north to flow daily into parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in virtually apocalyptic way. These are Trump's words. Now, of course, Newsom's press office said this claim is false and documentation doesn't exist. And he said, there is no such document as the Water Restoration Declaration as pure fiction. The governor is focused on protecting people, not playing politics, and making sure firefighters have all the resources they need. Okay, before I get into the water restoration, the governor is focused on protecting people, not playing politics, and making sure firefighters have all the resources they need. No, that's all you politicians are doing is playing politics. That's all you're doing. It's all you're doing. Not really trying to help. You're just pointing fingers. Who's going to take the blame for this? Newsom's definitely not trying to. Now, to get back to this water restoration declaration, me digging into it, me looking into it, there doesn't seem to be any water restoration declaration that you didn't sign at all, as a matter of fact. So what did happen was Trump signed a presidential memorandum in February of 2019 that directs the secretaries of the Interior and Commerce and the chair of the Council on Environmental Quality to help deliver and develop more water supplies in California's Central Valley. Now, this is according to the U.S. Department of the Interior. Now, the next day, then California Attorney General Xavier Becerra, the California Natural Resources Agency, and the California Environmental Protection Agency filed suit to block the action to protect fish that were close to extinction. Governor Newsom said at the time in a statement from California Department of Justice announcing the suit. So that is more in line of what actually happened, that Trump signed this presidential memorandum and the state of California tried to block it and they pushed back against it. But there's no evidence that there was a water restoration declaration outside of Trump saying it. There's none. So when it comes to that particular conspiracy theory, I don't buy it. First one that we talked about so far, yeah, I do buy into that fact, but this one, no. Another one, there's no money in FEMA, which is absolutely ludicrous to say that FEMA doesn't have money. What you want to say is FEMA's not helping as much as you think they should help. And I know that FEMA was embroiled in a crazy, crazy controversy where they weren't helping people who had Make America Great Again signs or Vote for Trump signs in the front of their houses, which was proved to be absolutely factual. I mean, even the left stream media couldn't deny that. That was absolutely factual. But when it comes to what's going on in California, I don't think that it's because FEMA doesn't have money, because Congress actually passed a bill in December that provided an additional $100 billion for disaster aid, including $29 billion for FEMA's disaster relief fund. And the funding was less than the $40 billion Biden had requested for the agency. So they got money. To say there's no money at FEMA, which has been circulating on social media, is absolutely ludicrous. Now, if you want to argue that FEMA's not doing their job or not helping to the fullest extent, well, we can just point to what I just said about them denying people access for services and help from them because of who they were voting for. So we do know that FEMA has always been kind of at the top of a lot of people's conspiracy theories, especially when it comes to disasters. So I'm not denying that. I'm just saying there's no proof that they don't have money. That's ludicrous. Next one is DEI and the wildfire response. So Elon Musk came out and said they prioritize DEI over saving lives and homes. Actor James Woods also came out on X and criticized Fire Chief Kristen Crowley. He shared a photo of her along with a screenshot from part of her biography on the department website discussing DEI. And he said priorities stated in her bio below, refilling the water reserves would have been a welcome priority too, but I guess she had too much on her plate promoting diversity. I'm going to push back on that, especially when it comes to Kristen Crowley, because it is very evident that she's been butting heads with her bosses since last year over the fact that they didn't have correct funding. They didn't have the resources they needed to be able to combat a fire of a ridiculous magnitude like LA's dealing with now, the Palisades are dealing with now, Eden's dealing with now. So I don't, when it comes to Crowley jump on board with that. Now, we can point fingers at Bass, Larson, Newsom. We could do that, but we can't specifically point to Crowley. Now, again, we do know that there are some things there that point to there possibly being a DEI hire with her, but from all indications, she's actually been trying to help. I don't care what you think about her politics or whatever else. As a matter of fact, she came out and said, hey, I'm not even here to be political. I'm just here to help. So I don't buy into that. Now, to say that DEI is the reason why these fires are out of control, I don't know. How much money really went towards DEI over helping the fire department? And we know they've cut the fire department's funding by $17 million. From what I read, that the money that California pumped into DEI was around, I think, $5 to $7 million. So that part doesn't really add up. Now, did they make that a major priority over helping people around them, at least for the future? Maybe. I'll say for this particular one that people are ranting and raving about, it's possible. It's possible. And sadly, we've got groups like the Proud Boys and some of these other, what I would consider 1%er groups that tout themselves as that, are running around and they're talking about people like Crowley with memes saying 0% contained, talking about the fires, 100% DEI. Then they started posting images of the Hollywood sign going up in flames. You know, people were passing that around saying that the Hollywood sign was up in flames. I'm like, man, come on, man. It's just, that's what bothers me so much about the conspiratorial world, man. Y'all are falling for everything. Y'all are. You're not looking in anything. You just see a meme and believe it. See a picture and believe it. Gotta look deeper. All this stuff isn't real, even coming out of people who say they're trying to find the truth. And I think that, I think there are people on both sides of the spectrum pushing agendas. The right is pushing agendas too. They're using this as a way to prove that their side is better than the other side and not helping. Nobody's helping. Where's the help for the people? Another conspiracy came out, said that protecting smelt fish limited available water to fight fires. Now, some politicians have claimed that protections for a tiny endangered fish species called the Delta smelt are impeding firefighters' abilities to battle the blaze because of water diversion. Again, this comes straight out of Trump's mouth. He accused Newsom of caring more about protecting the fish than protecting Californians, alleging that Newsom diverted water from residents to protect the fish. Trump said he wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water, but he didn't care about the people of California. And Trump was referring to that 2019 presidential memorandum that he signed that Newsom filed suit to block, saying at the time that Newsom said it puts at risk Delta smelt, Chinook salmon, Central Valley steelhead, and other fish species. Now, to say that the entire water supply was diverted because of these fish is a little ridiculous too, because we actually look into the actual data, and you can believe whatever you want to about the data, but that only 1.2% of the Bay Delta outflow went to help preserve these fish. Now, I am a big proponent in making sure that our planet is taken care of, that we take care of it. I come from this from a biblical angle that we're supposed to be stewards of this earth and we're supposed to take care of the earth. So at the end of the day, if you're using 1.2% of a water supply to protect an endangered species, I'm all about it. Now, to say that these numbers are exactly right, who knows? I mean, we know that data is skewed for sure, but this is one of those ones where there's not a lot of evidence for that's where all this water went to, was to protect these fish. We're talking about a 1.2% of a water supply is going to help these fish. That's not going to affect the fires in the way that's being presented. So the next one is going to be probably a touchy subject for some conspiratorial minds. And I frankly don't care if I piss you off, because again, when it comes to pointing fingers at groups of people or a race of people as being the big bad, I will never adhere to that. And I will always stand against that. I don't care who you are. I am literally about the word equality to its root core. I think that when Yeshua came and he expressed how we should all live together on this planet together and love each other, and we are all children of God. I'm going to say that again, all. If you don't agree with that, feel free to leave. This is one of those ones I draw the line in the sand on. I do not back down from at all. I will not. Because I have learned so much in my life, and I'm to a place where I think love and compassion is what we need to build on as a people. We've got too much division, too many people fighting over stupidness. I mean, we got people fighting over conspiracy theories. We see it all the time. Theories. People fighting over the Bible, fighting over religion, fighting over this because somebody feels differently than you. It's ludicrous. But when it comes to this particular topic, I'll go 0 to 60 quick because I don't have any space in my mind frame for it. And this particular one is the Jews are responsible for and deserve to suffer because of the wildfires. And I've seen this all over social media, specifically X. X is just a cesspool, in my opinion. I'm not saying it can't be utilized, and I know people that utilize it very well. But when we are sitting here pointing out a group of people and saying they're the big bad, only evil, it's out of control. You call me whatever you want to. Call me a shill, say I'm sycophanting up to them, whatever you want to say. I'll put that badge of honor on me and I'll stare you dead in the face and say you're wrong every single time. And I don't care if it's the Jews or if it's Black people or Asians or any other race than myself. If you pinpoint anybody as being inherently evil or having evil traits, nah, you're not going to be in my sphere at all. And I mean that. I don't have the energy for it. I'm not going to deal with it. This is ludicrous to sit here and say the Jews are the problem for this whole fire. Why is it always that becomes the thing that people have to say? As soon as something bad happens, they point to them every single time. I'm not doing an episode about this today. And maybe one day I will, and I can promise you it'll probably be a Rumble-only episode because I'll probably get nuked here, even though I'm going to come from an aspect I think is very educated and very open-minded about. But eventually I probably will do an episode about this ridiculous narrative of the Jews being the big bad evil. It's just ridiculous. Now, where this is coming from when it comes to this particular incident, it's coming from the fact that there is a couple called Stuart and Linda Resnick. They're the owners of the Wonderful Company. Now, they are a Jewish billionaire company. Now, I've seen all kind of stuff on social media. There was one post that said, it really is one group causing all the world's problems. Now, I know this goes to the fact that the Resnicks have been, again, this is mainstream media saying they've been falsely accused of controlling the water in California, and they have contributed to water shortages that have made it much harder to contain the fires. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit about Stuart Resnick and the Resnicks in general and the Wonderful Company. And I'm going to tell you, they're pretty shady. And I'm not going to say that they're not. And I'm not going to say that they don't have their hand in escalating this problem, but it hasn't been something that has been happening recently. It's been happening for a while. They've been controlling this for a while. Now, Stuart Allen Resnick was born December 24th, 1936. He's old, man. Is an American billionaire businessman. He is actually the wealthiest farmer in the United States. He's got a net worth exceeding $8 billion as of 2022. Resnick and his wife, Linda, bought the Franklin Mint in 1986 and sold it in 2006. Since 1979, he has been the chairman and president of the Wonderful Company. And through this holding company, which that's what the Wonderful Company is, they own Palm Wonderful and Fiji Water brands, which I like Fiji Water, by the way. Wonderful Pistachios and Almonds, Wonderful Halos, Wonderful Seedless Lemons, Justin Wines, Landmark Wines, JNSQ Wines, and the Teleflora Floral Wire Service Company. He also owns a majority stake in the Kern Water Bank. So they got their hands in everything. And the fact that he is the wealthiest farmer in the United States will let you know that they are involved with everything. Oh, guess what? They happen to be Jewish. So because they are these billionaire Jews, well, that just feeds the narrative that all Jews are evil, which I do not agree with at all. As a matter of fact, there are some people out there saying and suggesting that the Jews brought this destruction on themselves because there were a lot of expensive Jewish neighborhoods that also got hit by this fire, which seems counterproductive. If the Jews as a whole are at fault, then why are they burning themselves down? Makes no sense. But people don't stop to think about that. They don't think that there are elites in every single race or culture on the planet. Every single one. All of them. And some of these social media posts are awful. God is mad at the Jews. One said, the fires are a divine act against our Jewish overlords, and they deserve it. Deserve it. There are people. No matter of fact, there are people in the conspiratorial world right now behind a microphone like me that will say that. And I detest that kind of talk. Absolutely. You're uninformed. You don't actually look into things at the root cause. You don't even know what some of these families, where they actually came from, that masqueraded behind a Jewish name. I won't even mention that here on YouTube, who these names are behind the scenes that have integrated within. We could point to so many different things, but yet this is like a constant narrative now. I've never seen something explode so much as I have over the past 4 to 8 years when it came to one group of people. It's ludicrous. Now, where this idea that the Resnicks are involved with this whole water supply thing. So during the 2011 to 2017 California drought, which is called the Great Drought, it's ridiculously long, Resnick's Paramount Farms, which is part of the wonderful company, drilled 21 new wells in 2015 alone. And he owns, which I talked about to you earlier, majority stake in the Kern Water Bank, one of California's largest underground water storage facilities, which is capable of storing 500 billion gallons. So he has access to 500 billion gallons. Now, the Kern Water Bank, though privately owned, profits from water sales through publicly funded water transportation system. The acquisition, continuing private ownership, and water sales profit from this taxpayer-developed resource infrastructure while California suffers under drought has been controversial, which it is. And the fact that taxpayers' dollars are going to privately funded water sales is crazy. And yes, the Resnicks own a monopoly on the water supply in California. They have for a long time. This is nothing new. And yes, we should look to people like the Resnicks and the wonderful company and say, why is it that we can't get to water that we need to help put out these fires? Oh, but you need the water for what? Your farms, your product. That's why you got access to all of this water from the beginning, was to help your own profit, your own gain. And this is in conjunction with the California government. Now, I'm going to play this clip from Cat Williams. And I thought it was interesting. And I just finished talking about the wonderful company and the Resnicks. And he mentions them briefly. And I'll tell you what I think about that too.
Hello and welcome to another installment of NNN, where we give it to you straight, no chaser. Let's get right to it. LA is on fire. Now, a lot of people saying it's to cover up the foul trail, and all of a sudden the water ain't working. And hold on, 60% of the water rights is owned by this fucking couple. What's their name? Yeah, the wonderful company is owned by this husband and wife team. They own pistachio, they own Fiji water. I stopped drinking any of that around the motherfucking globe. Let them motherfuckers go broke. Feeding the pistachios and the almonds, all that goddamn water. Meanwhile, people's houses burning down, dying of thirst and shit. All these sons of bitches. And the regulators who allowed them motherfuckers to own 60% of the goddamn water. Fire them motherfuckers too, goddamn. What the f is y'all problem? That is public water. We built the dam that's holding that water and all that shit with taxpayers' dollars. How the f y'all gonna sign it over to this goddamn couple? Sons of bitches. Let's pray for the motherfuckers out there that houses is burning down and shit, unless they files. If they files, them. Let that get burned. Cause I know what you're doing. You're burning the evidence up, sons of bitches, but we still gonna catch you. And let somebody do some research. In the rich neighborhoods, who had already left their house and knew that the fire was coming?
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And it seems like, Cat Williams knows a little bit about the Resnicks and what they're involved in as far as being allowed to own that much water supply in California as part of a privatized organization is insane. And I completely agree with him there. Now, he does delve into a little bit of the more crazier theories that are coming out now. And this will get into the next piece. And I thought it would be a good segue to have him talk to get into this next piece. That another one of the conspiracies going around is the wildfires are a product of an inside job by Hollywood or the government. Now, there are people online arguing that these are geoengineered fires. They are deliberate weaponization of weather modification by the government, and they're trying to kill us all. Alex Jones even came out and said it was a larger globalist plot to wage economic warfare. He said that about everything. So honestly, anything negative that's happening, it's going to be a larger globalist plot to wage economic warfare. And I'm not saying that there's not aspects of that with this. And I think that we can look objectively and say there are some weird things going on. However, when it comes to geoengineering, when it comes to direct energy weapons, when it comes to someone else starting the fires, we have to be very discerning about what we're taking on board, because there are videos going around with people saying there are these lasers coming out of the sky and they're falsified, they're fake, they're CGI. They're not all real, guys. We have to understand that. Just as much as I argue on this show that everything's not fake, well, everything's not real either. So we have to have a discerning mind about what's going on. And I will talk about dues here in a minute, but I wanted to bring this part up about the inside job by Hollywood or the government. Now, here's what I gotta say. I know that there were a lot of reports coming out that Hunter Biden's home was destroyed in the fire, which we don't have any concrete evidence on that. Now, Biden's home was indeed in path of the fires. Now, the scale of the damage is unclear, so we don't really know. And we know of quite a few celebrities' homes burning up, which mysteriously enough, these celebrities were not there. Now, that's not to say that they didn't hear the evacuation and knew that they were supposed to get out of there. Of course. But you got to ask the question, how soon did they get out of there? Some of that stuff we'll never know. Some of that stuff we're just going to speculate on. We're going to say, oh, well, this is what it is. And I'll just bring up a few names of people's houses that have been impacted. Joshua Jackson was one of them. Candy Spelling, the Kardashians. We don't even know exactly what the extent of destruction they've had on their home. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and saying that she lost her $15 million home in Pacific Palisades. Mel Gibson, which I'm going to play a clip here in a minute of him talking about what he thinks is going on. He was on Fox News talking about some conspiracy theories about what was going on. Very similar to Cat Williams. His home burned up as well. Ricky Lake, home burned up. Melissa Rivers, John Goodman, Diane Warren, Matthew Perry, even though he had already tragically passed away. And yes, there are tons of conspiracies about that as well. But we're just talking about his property burned down in the fires too. Tina Knowles, Eugene Levy, Miles Teller, Billy Crystal, Jeff Bridges, Kate Beckinsale, Anthony Hopkins, Chrissy Teigen, and John Legend, which I will stop on their names in particular, because I think if we're in the conspiratorial world, there are a lot of strange things that have gone on when it comes to Chrissy Teigen and John Legend, specifically when it comes to what Cat Williams was just talking about with children. There's a lot of weird stuff they've said in interviews, and they are very connected to Diddy, very connected to that type of entertainment. And I don't think it's real entertainment. I'm just using that word because I think it's the best way to say it on these platforms. But one of the theories that's rolling around is the fires were started to get rid of evidence of people that have been involved with Diddy. Here's what I think. I don't think they were started specifically for that. Maybe it was just a byproduct of what was already happening, and it was used as a catalyst to help get rid of some of that stuff. It is really odd, all the people that lost their homes that are celebrities. Now, I'm going to play this clip from Mel Gibson talking on Fox News. I think it's interesting enough to play, and we'll talk about that too.
I know they were messing with the water, letting reserves go for one reason or another. They've been doing that a while. California has a lot of problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things. And then in the events like this, you sort of look, well, is it on purpose? Which it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be? I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know.
Well, Mel, there's already talk, and we played a couple of sound bites of reimagining the way rebuilding occurs. And obviously there's a great need for high density housing in California and across the country. That's a big push by the climate folks. And you're already hearing rumblings of that. In this case, like goodbye single family homes, hello high density housing.
Yeah. It's pretty scary, and it'll take decades to do that too. It's like even if it if it's a good idea, which I don't know if it is, but reminds me of the old cattle barons clearing people off the land.
So I think Mel Gibson's just speculating there, and it's hard to say exactly what he means. He's not as overt as Cat Williams was. However, Cat Williams is on his own show and Mel Gibson was on Fox News, so I'm sure he's not going to get too crazy with it. However, he got lit up on CNN and MSNBC and all that for suggesting there could be something nefarious going on with these fires. Listen, I don't think that it adds up. Not what the mainstream is telling us is going on there. There's too much that just seems weird, all the way back to Karen Bass leaving right before this disaster happened. And after she was warned about it being on the verge of happening, still left. That just starts there. And it goes all the way through everything else I've mapped out to you. So the other idea is that it's dues. And I'll be honest with you guys, I get so sick of hearing about dues because anytime anything fire related happens, people scream out dues. Sometimes, guys, it's just a fire. Listen, this could literally be a fire that started on its own because of this drought, because of the brush that's so easily ignited. It could very well be something that started on its own. Now, in saying that, though, they could have predicted it was coming and knew to funnel all this other stuff underneath it. We just brought up people involved with Diddy. Maybe this was known that this could happen and it was close to happening and it was just used. I see this happen a lot with natural disasters. I don't think they're all created. Now, I think they can be manipulated by people for their own gains. But we can't just point to every single one. It's getting bad now, where a tornado touches down in a small city in Timbuktu and people will find something weird there and say, oh, the HAARP, they dropped one down. It's not always manufactured. And again, I'm not saying that some stuff isn't. I think we know for a fact. We know cloud seeding. We know of weather manipulation and how that it has been used, but it's not every single case, just like dues. And of course, people are pointing to the fact that it's dues and they're trying to usher in 15-minute cities. Now, here's what I'll say, because a lot of stuff that's been popping up on social media is this has Maui written all over it. Same script, different location. How heartbreaking for these poor people. Very much these type of posts. And they are pointing to 15-minute cities, which, by the way, they are trying to implement 15-minute cities in California. We know Climate Smart San Jose was adopted in 2018. It's an initiative to reduce air pollution, save water, improve quality of life. They're trying to create 15-minute city there. We know Smart City San Diego is also trying to do the same thing. There's an entire document at sanfranciscoparksalliance.org where they talk about it, how they're trying to implement it. We know they're trying to implement one in LA. 15-minute city project created by Dan Lusher, a San Francisco resident and urbanist. The Baylands Project, a 660-acre redevelopment project on the San Francisco-Bisbane border that will include nearly 4,000 homes. Smart City Initiative in Long Beach. We know this is happening. We know that it is. And the reason why people are pointing towards it being Maui all over again, and this is the one part I will agree with, is because between 2011 and 2016, there was a community project called Jump Smart Maui, JSM, and it was held in the island of Maui, Hawaii, with the objective of effective utilization of renewable energy and the creation of a smart city in Maui. And where they're trying to put this smart city in Maui was where the fires happened in Maui. So how the fires happen is irrelevant in the fact that there's a multitude of different ways it could have happened. I know conspiracy theorists go straight to dues, man, and that drives me insane. However, I'm not going to say it completely isn't. I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say I think that when we look at things objectively, there's many other ways to start fires if it was man-made without it having to be a dew. Now, for people that don't understand what dews are, it's a direct energy weapon, is concentrated electromagnetic energy to combat enemy forces and assets. These weapons include high-energy lasers and other high-powered electromagnetics, such as millimeter wave and high-powered microwave weapons. And unlike weapons that fire bullets or missiles, dews can respond to a threat in different ways. For example, they can temporarily degrade electronics on a drone or physically destroy it. Each type of dew uses a different region of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this spectrum describes all of the kinds of light, including many the human eye cannot see, and classifies them according to wavelengths. So this is why a lot of times I don't believe these laser videos that people post or laser pictures people post, because a lot of these dews are not seen by the human eye, can't be seen by the human eye. They are microwave wavelengths that are hidden from our eyesight. So even if a dew happened, we wouldn't see it like that. And that's why I think that there are a lot of fake videos rolling around every time a fire disaster happens and start screaming out dews. Now, are we, United States, involved with dews? Absolutely. In 2019, the Pentagon shifted their focus to dews. As a matter of fact, the Department of Defense focused its directed energy weapons research on technologies ready to be put in the field now. And they put on the back burner plans to create more complex space-based technology. And this came straight out of the Pentagon. Michael Griffin, who was the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering of the Pentagon, said, exploring the usefulness of directed energy, specifically figuring out how to increase the wattage of these weapons, is the Pentagon's focus now. This was in 2019. So we know that they're looking at high-powered microwaves. We know that they're doing that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to play this clip from Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and Richard B. Meyer. This is a classic clip, but I love playing it because they're talking about dews back in 2003. And we're going to play that now and talk about it.
Can I ask you a question about some of the technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed energy and high-powered microwave technology? When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
Goodness. It is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in varying early stages. Do you want to give anything you'd add?
I don't think I would add much. I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
In the normal order of things, when you invest in research and development and begin a developmental project, you don't have any intention or expectations that one would use it. On the other hand, the real world intervenes from time to time, and you reach in there and take something out that is still in a developmental stage, and you might use it. So your question's not answerable. It depends on what happens in the future and how well things move along the track, and whether or not someone feels it's appropriate to reach into a development stage and see if something might be useful, as was the case with the unmanned aerial vehicles.
But you sound like you're willing to experiment with it.
I think that's the point, and I think, and we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at new things if there are new things available, and has been willing to put them into the fight even before they've been fully wrung out. And I think that's not referring to these two particular cases of directed energy or high-powered microwave, but sure. And
yes.
We will continue.
Yeah, so Rumsfeld and Myers were being very evasive when being asked about directed energy weapons. As a matter of fact, they said they're a whole experimental phase. We don't really know. But then they said, well, sometimes, though, if the situation calls for it, then we'll just dip into that bag even if it's not ready and use it. So they're admitting to directed energy weapons back in 2003. So we know we've had these for a long time. To say that we've used them on ourselves, listen, I'm not throwing out of the realm of possibility. As a matter of fact, I would say that we more than likely have in certain circumstances. Have we used it in this circumstance? I don't know. I lean to the idea that no, because I just think there are other ways that this could have happened, especially with the fact of the matter, there's a massive drought going on, and this could have been started naturally, or even just with a little boost, right? Just a little boost, couple people. It's very possible. But I don't think that personally that dudes were a part of this. However, I could be wrong. I do leave myself the leeway to be definitely wrong on this, because I don't think anybody has this one figured out. There's too many parts and too many pieces moving, too many people that could benefit from this. Now, I'm going to get into a very interesting part that I dug up, and this is going to be a lot of fun for me because I love finding connections to the occult or esoteric when it comes to some of these weird things that happen in the world that, could be manufactured for sure. And one of the things that conspiracy theorists were pointing out to that really set some bells off in my head, I said, wait a minute, I've done some research on this, and let me dig that up and integrate it into this narrative about the fires. And a lot of people online were noticing that many palm trees had been left standing as cars and homes burned beside them, and they said, this is weird. Now, I will say, just on the basic level, the reality is that many trees do survive wildfires, and they owe this to just adapting, ranging from thick bark that insulates its inner layers, high moisture content in the wood, which palm trees would have. Most heat from a wildfire also occurs at ground level, which has not reached the tree canopy. But it's still kind of weird that there'll be this, and I saw some of the pictures where just be this massive fire and there'd be 2 or 3 trees, palm trees, just standing, which I thought was kind of weird. And, again, we could look at this very basically and say this is because of the trees being able to withstand the type of fire and heat that's coming from these rampant wildfires. But there is a esoteric significance when it comes to palm trees. And I found it fascinating that the palm tree itself is the one that's surviving here. Now, palm trees have been a part of many ancient religions and mythologies and been used as symbols of victory, peace, and rebirth. So we'll start with ancient Egypt. Palm trees were associated with fertility, abundance, and resurrection. Keep those in mind, rebirth, resurrection. The palm tree was also the symbol of the god Atum, who is said to have created himself from a palm tree. Now, Atum, he's sometimes called Atem, Temu, or Tem, is the primordial god in Egyptian mythology from whom all else arose. He was the creator god. He created himself and is the father of Shu and Tefnut, the divine couple, were the ancestors of the other Egyptian deities. Atum is also closely associated with the evening sun, and he has connections to the underworld as well. Now, he does have several different origin stories. I'm just going to be honest with you. You will see this a lot with Egyptian deities. And I actually got in a discussion with somebody recently who said I was wrong about a specific Egyptian god or deity. And I pointed to the fact that, listen, Ra, Horus, Osiris, any of these deities, there's a ton of them. Some of them will have up to 15, 20 different origin stories. They're not really all the same. It's kind of like the idea that Jesus and Horus are the same person, that Jesus was written to be a form of Horus, which a lot of biblical deniers and Christian deniers will say. They'll point to that, oh, Jesus and Horus are the same. Well, actually not, because Jesus has one origin story and Horus has, last time I looked, 16, 17 different ones. So it doesn't connect at all. And you'll see this from most scholars. Even atheist scholars will tell you that that's just not in the same sphere to even talk about. I know a lot of people got that from the original Zeitgeist movie, which I liked a lot, because there were a lot of good things in that film, but that was one of the major things that he started with, was that Christianity is a false religion and it's here to enslave us. And I think there are some aspects that he said are correct, that I think that the church, what it turned into, was there to control people. But I do not think Yeshua at all was a part of that. And he is not Horus, by the way. But I wanted to just say that because even Atum, who ended up becoming Ra Atum, because they ended up mixing gods as well. Egyptians did that depending on the periods of time, because you had the old kingdom, the middle, and the new kingdom, and you would see these different deities change throughout the different kingdoms and how they were presented. So Atum, in one story, created himself from a palm tree itself, and that's why the palm tree is connected to Atum, which is supposed to be the god that created it all, according to Egyptian mythology. And the palm stems represented long life, and the palm trees were also used in religious rituals and planted in temple gardens. So this was a very important plant when it came to the Egyptians. But it wasn't just the Egyptians. Ancient Greece, the same thing. The palm tree was associated with Apollo, and he was born under a palm tree. Apollo is one of the Olympian deities in ancient Greek and Roman religion and Greek and Roman mythology. Apollo has been recognized as god of archery, music and dance, truth and prophecy, healing and diseases, the sun and light, poetry, and a lot of other things as well. And he is also known as the oracle god, the prophetic deity of the Delphic oracle, and also the deity of ritual purification. So start keeping these words in mind: resurrection, rebirth, purification. Keep these in mind as we go through this and this connection to the fires in California. And in ancient Greece, palm branches were awarded to victorious athletes. The date palm was linked to the phoenix, the bird of what? Rebirth. Ancient Rome, the palm tree was a common symbol of victory. We know in Judaism, the date palm is part of the festival of Sukkot. And the festival of Sukkot, also known as the Feast of the Tabernacles or Feast of Booths, is a Jewish holiday where people celebrate by building and eating meals in a temporary hut called a sukkah, commemorating the 40 years the Israelites wandered in the desert after the Exodus from Egypt. So this is that 40 years where they had to survive because they didn't trust God when they saw the Nephilim giants, the Anakim, when they went into the promised land the first time, and the 12 spies came back. 10 of them told Moses that we were like grasshoppers in the sight of these Nephilim. So God punished them by making them stay in the desert for 40 years. The festival of Sukkot is to commemorate them coming out of the 40 years. And the date palm is used for that. See this theme throughout history. The palm tree is used in not only Christian circles, but just in religious circles, period. And very much used in the esoteric and occult realms as well, which we'll talk about here in a second. And the palm tree in Judaism represents peace and plenty. Now, in Christianity, the palm tree is mentioned in the Bible more than 50 times. Palm branches are used in Palm Sunday. We know of Jesus arriving in Jerusalem on Palm Sunday when he was proclaimed to be king and Messiah. Palm trees were waved in honor to show that he is the one who will restore paradise. And at the same time, some of these palm leaves were thrown at his feet. They were stepped upon, trodden into the muddy earth, and it was a prophecy that he would do this. And this was to signify that he was the King of Kings, and this was before his crucifixion. So this is very important in Christian circles. The palm tree itself, it's considered a symbol of praise, victory, and salvation. And it was carved into a lot of the temple decor. And the people, when they dropped these palm leaves in front of Yeshua as he's walking by, they would have understand the full significance of the palm leaf, because they were expecting Jesus to be the conquering hero over the Roman oppressors. And this was why that the Sadducees, Pharisees, and people in elite circles of Judaism did not accept Yeshua as the Messiah, because they expected the Messiah to come and wipe out their oppressors and become king. And that was the coming of the Messiah. The problem was that the Messiah was here, but he had a completely different message that he was trying to share, that there are people to this day that do not believe that he was the Messiah. But the palm leaf, which I already explained to you how it was used in Judaism when it comes to the festival of the Sukkot, that they used those leaves to put at the feet of Yeshua as he walked into Jerusalem to signify that he was the king, the coming king. He was here. We know that in Islam, the date palm is used in many religious traditions and texts. The palm tree is significant as a part of the Garden of Jannah, which the Garden of Jannah is paradise in the Quran. We know Mary's childbirth. The Quran talks about Mary holding onto a palm tree during childbirth. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have had a close relationship with the date palm trees around him. The story of the weeping date palm tells of the tree's sadness when the Prophet was no longer present. So again, the palm tree itself is a very important, significant piece of iconography that shows up from the dawn of time all the way to now. And as we look into it a little bit deeper, we'll talk about the significance of the palm tree itself. Now, we talked earlier about the phoenix. Now, there's one that builds into the date palm itself. Its scientific name is Phoenix dactylifera. The word phoenix is from the Greek language, and when translated, means both palm and sunbird. The Greeks learned about the sunbird or the phoenix from older myths. In particular, they knew about the legendary Egyptian bird that would cast itself into a fire each evening, flaming out in a death of red embers. The phoenix is like the sun in the western sky, only to spread its wings and rise to life again each dawn when the gold sun reemerges in the east. So this is that symbolism of rebirth. The date palm itself has the word phoenix in its scientific name. So the idea of the palm tree throughout tons of different religions has a significance of rebirth. So we have to ask ourselves, is there some sort of occult connection to the fires that are going on in California? Do the fact that these palm trees are standing while these fires are going on around them, is that a signifier for this rebirth, this burning down of the old, birthing of the new age, the new aeon, the new world order, whatever you want to call it? Is that just a part of it? I do look at symbolism. I'm not the person that's always trying to point out symbolism and everything, because sometimes we can make ourselves go mad doing it. But if something just keys me off a little bit, I want to look into it. And listen, I could be totally off base here. It could just be that the palm trees are standing. But I do think there's always layers to things going on. And I just thought that that was a very fascinating point that I can make about this one part of these conspiracies that are going on around about California. And I thought this was very interesting connection that I could bring up. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode today. I had a blast doing it, and I always have a blast finding some connections that maybe other people aren't seeing, and it could be off base too. Who knows? But I do have fun doing it. Before I get out of here, I'm going to read a few 5-star reviews like I always do every week, because you guys are awesome and you've been really burning it up on the comments on YouTube too, which has been fantastic. You guys killed it on this last episode. Start with Apple Podcast, Miss Ladder 207, Freed Rabbit. Love the out of the box thinking with good research and documentation. Joel never just phones in the effort. I may not always agree with him, but there is always some food for additional thought. Appreciate that, Miss Ladder. And yes, I do try to not phone it in. I really try to do as much research on something as possible to try to give a good basis for what I'm trying to say. We've got True Niece, great show, open-minded yet down to earth, very informative. I'm impressed. Keep up the great work. Thanks. Appreciate that, True Niece. We've got Melio Ooper, great show. Been listening to Joel for years. Appreciate that, Melio Ooper. Glad you've been listening to for years. That's pretty awesome. Going to go to Spotify. Remember on Spotify, guys, I do get the comments. They're just not published, but I get them all, and I try to read as many of them as I can on the show. We got Fitz ML. Good episode, very informative. He was talking about the Lucius Trust. Appreciate that, Fitz ML. Got James Mack, 2017. Great episode. You're absolutely right. True wisdom lies in recognizing the limits of our knowledge and staying open to learning. Your podcast is one of my favorites. Thank you, brother. God bless you. Appreciate that, James Mack, 2017. We've got Markitect. Dude, the research and resources you dig up and internalize to intuitively put your spin on the subject matter is absolutely insane. Love what you guys are doing over at Merkle Media. Put you guys in my prayers. Love the show, bro. Give me a shout out, please, from DE. I'm assuming you mean Delaware. Appreciate that, Markitect. And I am giving you a shout out, so I hope you heard it. Going to go to YouTube now. We got Julie Burl, 1681. Love his podcast. Joel has been the best podcast by far on YouTube. Been away for a while, but I always come back. Had to touch the grass for a while. LOL. Thanks, Joel. I appreciate you. Step away as long as you need to if you need to touch grass. I encourage people to do that. We don't need to get stuck down these rabbit holes where we're losing sight on the things that really matter around us. Michelle Abanur, thank you so much for committing to speaking the truth no matter the pushback. You love Jesus and his people too much to lie or compromise the truth of the word. Appreciate that, Michelle. I try. I'm never perfect. And I hope that I can humbly come and give you guys the knowledge that I have. And hopefully I keep learning in the process. We've got Shekinah. To be as researched as you are, you need to look more into Yahweh, going all the way back to where the name first came up post-Sumerian times, being what they began to call the king overload, Anunnaki, whatever you want to call him, Marduk, not the name of actual God Almighty, the one and only God. I read this comment because it's actually on my docket to do an episode about Yahweh. And I am going to come from a Christian perspective. I'm not going to come from a Gnostic perspective. I am going to show you the antithesis of this line of thinking because I see it a lot. And I think that I see it more than most because I balance this line between a Christian worldview and an understanding of Gnosticism and the occult and these other lines of thinking because I was involved with them. And I think sometimes people gravitate over to listen to me that are still involved in these practices because they like what I have to say until I get to a certain point. And again, I appreciate you're here. I appreciate that you're writing a comment. I appreciate that you listen to the show. And again, I'm not going to compromise my beliefs, but I will do an episode about Yahweh. I promise that's coming. I will do an extensive episode on Yahweh, and I will explain some of these things that people think are actually Yahweh and what is and isn't. I plan on doing that very soon. All right, guys, before I get out of here, I'm going to play one of my songs called Lights on the Mesa from the Shape of Shadows soundtrack. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you haven't given me a 5-star review yet on any of the platforms, please go do that now. It really helps run the algorithm up. All right, guys, you know what it is. Go outside, touch grass, and get your tail out the hole.
Things look a little different when I look at the heavens. Glow from the brush strokes leave a different impression. Behind the holy water, all I'm seeing is devils. Used to stop at the 6s, sixes, now I push to the sevens. This is my confession. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The lights around me beckon. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lost in my reflection. No, no, no. I ain't trying to go away at all. I don't know if I'm caught up in the lights on the Mesa. They're so bright. Makes me think about life in the desert that swallowed me whole. I'm just trying to cruise on a trail, but I know that my script is written in a way that won't make it easy for me, I know. When people look at me, they look for something they can define. I just never knew a box I couldn't decline. I never thought of being one of a kind. I just spent my time elevating my mind. This is my confession. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The lights around me beckon. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lost in my reflection. No, no, no. I ain't trying to go away at all. I don't know if I'm caught up in the lights on the Mesa. They're so bright. Makes me think about life in the desert that swallowed me whole. I'm just trying to cruise on a trail, but I know that my script is written in a way that won't make it easy for me, I know. I know you don't know my truth. I spent my youth wasting my lose, but now my deeds are spent on keys to set us free. Set us free. I don't know if I'm caught up in the lights on the Mesa. They're so bright. Makes me think about life in the desert that swallowed me whole. I'm just trying to cruise